Well, congratulations on having finished your third gospel. By the time you watch this, no doubt you will have finished up Luke, and some of you are already beginning with the Gospel of John. But we've now made it through what we call the synoptic gospels, those gospels that see with the same eye or very similar. I want to show you this here in Luke chapter 23. It's the first reading of your last section. Luke 23, beginning in verse 33, it's the story of the crucifixion. Before we get into it, I want to highlight something. It's a verse you kind of see in the middle, and it kind of pops out probably at you because verse 38, it has this phrase written in all caps. It says, "This is the King of the Jews." This is the charge that would have been placed upon the cross. It is the thing that the criminal, the crucified person was guilty of. And so here we see Jesus being guilty of being the King of the Jews. Keep that in mind. Verse 33, when they came to the place called the Skull, there they crucified Jesus and the criminals, one on the right and the other on the left. But Jesus was saying, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they're doing." And they cast lots, dividing up his garments among themselves. And the people stood by looking on, and even the rulers were sneering at him, saying, "He saved others. Let him save himself, if this is the Christ of God, his chosen one." And the soldiers also mocked him, coming up to him, offering him sour wine, and saying, "If you're the King of the Jews, save yourself." Now this was also an inscription above him, "This is the King of the Jews." And one of the criminals who were hanged there was hurling abuse at him, saying, "Are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us." But the other answered, and rebuking him said, "Do you not even fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation? And we indeed are suffering justly, for we're receiving what we deserve for our deeds, but this man's done nothing wrong." And he was saying, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus said to him, "Truly I say to you, today you shall be with me in paradise." It was about the 6th hour, and darkness fell over the whole land until the 9th hour, because the sun was obscured, and the veil of the temple was torn in two. And Jesus, crying out with a loud voice, said, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." And having said this, he breathed his last. And when the centurion saw what had happened, he began praising God, saying, "Certainly this man was innocent." And all the crowds who came together for this spectacle, when they observed what had happened, began to return, beating their breasts. And all acquaintances and the women accompanied him from Galilee were standing at a distance, seeing these things. Now, it's interesting if you just make some observations about this passage. This whole idea of that here he is, King of the Jews, and we think of a king who is the focus of attention, and he's surrounded by a court who respects him, who honors him. Think of the king seated on the throne, and those who come to pay homage to the king. Now, we've seen in other accounts how the soldiers were actually mocking him. Well, here's another picture of that mockery. Here's the king. He's surrounded by all these people, but he's certainly not on a throne. He is being crucified. And you have also within these passages this almost accordion-like effect. It starts out with the large crowd, but then it shrinks down into the individuals. So you have the two criminals, and then the soldiers. But then Jesus is just talking to the one criminal. Then it's just Jesus and the Father. Then it's just the centurion. And then it's back out to the crowd. And so this idea of, regardless of what the crowd is doing, the individual still has this opportunity to respond to Jesus. And it's an interesting turn because we know that the criminals on either side of him, both, it seems to begin with, were entering into this mocking, but at some point, one criminal had a change of heart, a change of mind, and says, "Jesus, remember me when you get into," what's it say, "your kingdom," again, that emphasis on the king. And then the centurion also, after Jesus talks to the Father, has this realization that this man wasn't who we thought. And so we're left with this picture of Jesus there in the middle, having been crucified, and the crowd there around him left. And so it kind of anticipates this question: when the king returns again, how will the individuals and the crowd respond to him when he does? Well, we've seen 3 Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke. John gives us a little bit different perspective, and so I can't wait to get into the Gospel of John with you. Keep reading.